Elara, you're a burden. You can't even manage our home or care for Juniper. What good are you? Milo's words sliced through the sterile hospital air, cutting deeper than the injuries that had landed me here. I stared at him, my husband of 10 years, searching for a glimmer of the man I'd fallen in love with. There was nothing but cold disdain in his eyes. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice hoarse from disuse. "I'll try harder." He scoffed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Try harder? You've been saying that for years. Look at you now, laid up in this bed. Who's taking care of our daughter? Who's running our household?" I swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "It was an accident, Milo. I didn't mean to." "Of course you didn't mean to," he interrupted, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You never mean to do anything wrong, do you, Elara? It's always an accident, always someone else's fault." My name is Elara, and this is the moment I realized my husband was my enemy. I closed my eyes, willing the pain in my chest to subside. It wasn't just from the broken ribs, it was the crushing weight of disappointment and betrayal. When had things gone so wrong? When had the man who once promised to love and cherish me become this cruel, unfeeling stranger? "Where's Juniper?" I asked, changing the subject. "Is she okay?" Milo's face softened slightly at the mention of our daughter. "She's with your parents. They're spoiling her rotten, as usual." I nodded, relieved that at least our little girl was safe and cared for. "Can I see her soon?" "When you're better," Milo said dismissively. "She doesn't need to see you like this. It would only upset her." I bit my lip, holding back a retort. Of course Juniper would want to see me, regardless of my condition. She was only 7, but she was perceptive and loving. Unlike her father. Milo glanced at his watch, sighing dramatically. "I have to go. I have a meeting I can't miss." "On a Saturday?" I couldn't keep the suspicion out of my voice. His eyes narrowed. "Yes, on a Saturday. Some of us still have work to do, Elara. We can't all lie around in bed all day." The barb stung, but I refused to let him see how much it hurt. "Of course. I understand." Milo leaned down, his lips brushing my forehead in a perfunctory kiss. "Get better soon. We need you back home." As he turned to leave, a faint scent caught my attention. It wasn't his usual cologne. It was something softer, more floral. Women's perfume. The door closed behind him, and I was left alone with my thoughts and the steady beep of the heart monitor. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I blinked them away furiously. I was done crying over Milo. Done being the perfect, submissive wife who always tried to please him. I thought back to the accident that had brought me here. The screeching tires, the sickening crunch of metal, the world spinning out of control. It had been terrifying, but now, lying in this hospital bed, I felt an odd sense of clarity. This was my chance. My opportunity to reclaim my life, to become the woman I used to be before Milo's controlling nature had slowly eroded my sense of self. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. A nurse entered, her kind face a welcome change from Milo's cold demeanor. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Henderson?" she asked, checking my vitals. "I'm okay," I lied, forcing a smile. "When do you think I'll be able to go home?" The nurse consulted my chart. "The doctor wants to keep you for a few more days just to be safe. You took quite a hit in that accident." I nodded, my mind already racing. A few more days. That's all I needed to start formulating a plan. "Is there anything you need?" the nurse asked. "Anyone you'd like us to call?" I hesitated for a moment, then made a decision. "Yes, actually. Could you please call my father? Cyrus Blackwood." The nurse smiled. "Of course. I'll take care of that right away." As she left the room, I settled back against the pillows, a newfound determination coursing through me. Milo thought I was weak, a burden. He had no idea what I was capable of. I closed my eyes, picturing Juniper's sweet face. Everything I was about to do, I would do for her. To protect her from the man Milo had become. To give her the loving, stable home she deserved. My fingers curled into fists at my sides. Milo had made a grave mistake in underestimating me. He thought he held all the power in our relationship, but he was wrong. I had something he didn't know about, something that would change everything. A secret that would bring his carefully constructed world crashing down around him. As I drifted off to sleep, a small, satisfied smile played on my lips. Milo's reign of control was coming to an end, and he didn't even know it yet. Let the games begin. I closed my eyes, letting the rhythmic beeping of the hospital machines fade away as my mind drifted back to the beginning. The day I met Milo Henderson. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, leaves crunching under my feet as I hurried across the university quad. I was late for a guest lecture, my arms full of books and papers. That's when I collided with him. Whoa there! His voice was warm, tinged with amusement. Strong hands steadied me, preventing a fall. Are you all right? I looked up, meeting the most captivating green eyes I'd ever seen. I'm so sorry, I stammered, face flushing. I wasn't watching where I was going. He grinned, helping me gather my scattered belongings. No harm done. I'm Milo, by the way. Milo Henderson. Ilara Blackwood, I replied, returning his smile. That chance encounter sparked a whirlwind romance. Milo was charming, attentive, and seemed to genuinely care about my dreams and aspirations. We spent hours talking about everything and nothing, his wit and intelligence drawing me in deeper with each passing day. Our wedding, just a year later, was a fairy tale come to life. I floated down the aisle, certain I was marrying my soulmate. Milo's vows brought tears to my eyes. Ilara, you are my light, my inspiration, my everything, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I promise to cherish and support you, to be your partner in all things. Our love will only grow stronger with each passing year. The first few years of marriage were blissful. We traveled, built our careers, and created a beautiful home together. When Juniper was born, I thought my heart might burst with happiness. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. It started with small comments about my appearance. Are you sure you want to wear that? Milo would ask, his tone light, but his eyes critical. I think the blue dress suits you better. Then came the questions about my time. Where were you all afternoon? He demanded, even though I told him I was meeting a friend for coffee. You should have been home preparing dinner. I tried to brush it off, telling myself he was just stressed from work. But the controlling behavior escalated. I don't think you should go back to work, Milo announced one evening, shortly after my maternity leave ended. Juniper needs her mother at home. I was stunned. But we talked about this. I love my job and we agreed. Things change, Ilara, he interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. This is what's best for our family. Reluctantly, I resigned from my position, telling myself it was temporary. But as the months turned into years, I found myself increasingly isolated. Milo discouraged me from seeing old friends, claiming they were a bad influence. He controlled our finances, doling out an allowance, as if I were a child. You don't need to worry your pretty little head about money, he'd say patronizingly. I've got everything under control. I barely recognized myself anymore. The confident, ambitious woman I'd once been was fading away, replaced by a shadow who lived to please her husband. One night, after a particularly heated argument about my desire to take an online course, I found myself staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, and worry lines creased my forehead. What happened to you? I whispered to my reflection. That's when Juniper's small voice piped up from the doorway. Mommy? Are you okay? I turned, forcing a smile for my daughter. Of course, sweetheart. Mommy's just tired. Juniper's perceptive eyes studied me. Daddy yelled again, didn't he? He sounds scary sometimes. My heart clenched. I knelt down, pulling her into a tight hug. Everything's going to be all right, I murmured, more to myself than to her. I promise. As I held my daughter, a spark of my old self flickered to life. I couldn't let this continue. For Juniper's sake, and for my own, something had to change. The next morning, I made a decision. While Milo was at work and Juniper at school, I drove to the bank. With trembling hands, I withdrew a small amount of cash from our joint account and opened a separate, secret account in my name only. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A tiny act of rebellion, a step towards reclaiming my independence. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from Milo. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering the house phone?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The old Alara would have panicked, rushing home to avoid his anger. But something had shifted inside me. I pulled over, took a deep breath, and typed a reply. Ran a few errands. Be home soon. It was a small thing, but it felt monumental. For the first time in years, I was making a choice for myself, without seeking Milo's approval. As I pulled back onto the road, I felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't go on living this way. The woman Milo had fallen in love with was still inside me, buried beneath years of control and manipulation. It was time to set her free. The sound of Juniper's laughter filled the kitchen as I flipped another pancake onto her plate. It was Saturday morning, and Milo was away on yet another business trip. "Can we have a tea party later, Mommy?" Juniper asked, syrup dripping down her chin. I smiled, wiping her face with a napkin. "Of course, sweetheart. We can invite Mr. Snuggles and Princess Sparkle too." As I watched my daughter eat, I couldn't help but marvel at her resilience. Despite the tension that often filled our home, Juniper remained a bright, loving child. But I wasn't blind to the effects of Milo's behavior on her. "Mommy," Juniper said suddenly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Is Daddy coming home today?" I hesitated, unsure how to answer. "I'm not sure, honey. Why do you ask?" She shrugged, pushing her pancakes around her plate. "He's gone a lot. And when he is home, he's always on his phone or yelling." My heart clenched. "Daddy's just been busy with work, that's all." Juniper looked up at me, her eyes far too serious for a 7-year-old. "Is that why he smells different now?" I froze. "What do you mean, different?" "Like flowers," she said, wrinkling her nose. "It's not his normal smell. I don't like it." The room seemed to tilt for a moment as the implications of Juniper's innocent observation hit me. Floral perfume. The scent I'd noticed in the hospital wasn't a one-time occurrence. "When did you first notice this new smell?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Juniper thought for a moment. "A few months ago, I think. After he started working late all the time." I nodded, my mind racing. "Thank you for telling me, sweetheart. Now, why don't you go get dressed for our tea party?" As soon as Juniper left the kitchen, I sagged against the counter, my suspicions crystallizing into a sickening certainty. Milo was having an affair. The rest of the day passed in a blur of tea parties and forced smiles. After tucking Juniper into bed, I found myself pacing the living room, my thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. What was I going to do? Confront Milo? But with what proof? The word of a 7-year-old about a change in cologne? My eyes fell on Milo's desk in the corner of the room. He always kept it meticulously organized, warning me never to touch his work papers. But now, driven by a desperate need for answers, I approached it. The top drawer was locked, but I knew where Milo kept the key. With trembling hands, I retrieved it from its hiding place and opened the drawer. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Neatly stacked files, a calculator, some pens. But as I rifled through the papers, a small, pale blue envelope caught my eye. It was tucked beneath a stack of invoices, as if hidden. My heart pounding, I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note, the flowing script distinctly feminine. "My dearest Milo, last night was magical, as always. I can't wait to see you again. Remember, patience is a virtue. All my love, P." The letter slipped from my numb fingers, floating to the floor like a fallen leaf. Patience. Even her name was a mockery of my situation. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at nothing as my world crumbled around me. The sound of a car in the driveway jolted me back to reality. Milo was home. Hastily, I replaced the letter and locked the drawer, just managing to retreat to the kitchen before the front door opened. "Alara?" Milo called out. "Where are you?" I took a deep breath, plastering a smile on my face as I stepped into the hallway. "Welcome home. How was your trip?" Milo's eyes narrowed slightly, studying me.
"Fine. Productive.
Is Juniper asleep? I nodded, fighting to keep my voice steady. Yes. She went down about an hour ago. He grunted, loosening his tie. Good. I'm going to take a shower. As he brushed past me, that faint floral scent wafted through the air. Juniper was right. It wasn't his usual cologne. I waited until I heard the shower running before I allowed the tears to fall. How had I been so blind? So willing to make excuses for his behavior? But as I stood there, crying silently in the darkened hallway, something shifted inside me. The sadness gave way to anger, then determination. I thought of Juniper, of the life I wanted for her. A life free from lies and manipulation. I couldn't confront Milo. Not yet. I needed more evidence, needed to be smart about this. For Juniper's sake, and for my own. Wiping my eyes, I made a decision. Tomorrow, I would start looking for a private investigator. Someone who could give me the proof I needed to break free from this sham of a marriage. As I heard the shower turn off, I straightened my shoulders and headed to the bedroom. I would play the role of the dutiful wife a little longer. But not for much longer. Milo had no idea what was coming. And for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope for the future. A future where I would reclaim my life, my dignity, and my freedom. The game was about to change, and this time, I intended to win. The Office of Reed Investigations was nothing like I'd imagined. Instead of a dimly lit, smoke-filled room straight out of a noir film, I found myself in a modern, well-lit space with sleek furnishings and state-of-the-art technology. Mrs. Henderson, a tall, athletic woman with short-cropped hair approached me, hand extended. I'm Samantha Reed. Please come in. I followed her to a private office, clutching my purse tightly. Inside, I hesitated before taking a seat across from her desk. So, Samantha said, her tone businesslike but not unkind, what can I help you with today? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I believe my husband is having an affair. Samantha nodded, her expression neutral. I see. And what has led you to this conclusion? As I recounted the evidence, the late nights, the mysterious phone calls, Juniper's comments about the new cologne, and the letter I'd found, Samantha listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. Mrs. Henderson, she said when I'd finished, based on what you've told me, I believe you have good reason to be suspicious. However, to build a solid case, we'll need more concrete evidence. What kind of evidence? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Photos, video footage, financial records, Samantha replied. Anything that definitively proves your husband's infidelity. I nodded, a mix of relief and apprehension washing over me. How long will this take? It depends on how careful your husband is being, Samantha explained. But typically, in cases like these, we can gather sufficient evidence within a few weeks. As we discussed the details of the investigation, including the not insignificant cost, a part of me still couldn't believe I was doing this. But then I thought of Juniper, of the life I wanted for her, and my resolve strengthened. One more thing, I said as our meeting concluded. My husband can't know about this. He has a temper. Samantha's eyes softened with understanding. Don't worry, Mrs. Henderson. Discretion is our top priority. As I left the office, I felt a strange mixture of dread and exhilaration. The wheels were in motion now. There was no turning back. The next few weeks were a masterclass in deception. I maintained a facade of normalcy at home, all while secretly communicating with Samantha and her team. Every time Milo announced a late meeting or a business dinner, I relayed the information to the investigators. It was during this time that I stumbled upon something unexpected. While searching for an old photo album in our attic, I came across a small, locked safe I'd never seen before. My curiosity piqued. I made a mental note of its location, determined to find a way to open it. 3 weeks after my initial meeting with Samantha, I received a text message. We have what we need. Meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m. That night, as Milo and I sat at opposite ends of the dinner table, the silence between us thick and oppressive, I studied him. How had we come to this? The man I'd once loved so deeply now felt like a stranger. I have to go out of town next week, Milo announced suddenly, not looking up from his plate. Important client meeting. I nodded, keeping my voice neutral. How long will you be gone? 3 days, maybe 4, he replied. I'll let you know. As I cleared the dishes, my mind raced. This trip could be the perfect opportunity to investigate that safe in the attic. The next day, I sat in Samantha's office, my hands shaking as I looked through the folder she'd handed me. Photos of Milo entering a high-end hotel, arm in arm with a stunning blonde woman. Security camera footage of them kissing in an elevator. Credit card statements showing expensive gifts and meals for 2 at romantic restaurants. Her name is Patience Lawson, Samantha explained gently. She's a junior executive at a rival firm. They've been seeing each other for at least 6 months, possibly longer. I stared at a close-up photo of Patience, taking in her flawless skin and designer clothes. She looked young, probably in her late 20s. Everything I used to be, before years of Milo's control had worn me down. What do you want to do now, Mrs. Henderson? Samantha asked. I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. I want to end my marriage. But first, I need to know what's in that safe. Samantha nodded, understanding in her eyes. We can help with that. When will the house be empty? Next week, I replied. Milo will be out of town, and I can send Juniper to my parents for a day. As I left the office, clutching the damning evidence of Milo's betrayal, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The truth was out now, and with it came a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. I thought of the frightened, downtrodden woman I'd become, and of the strong, independent person I used to be. It was time to reclaim that woman, for myself and for Juniper. Milo had no idea what was coming. But soon, very soon, his carefully constructed world of lies would come crashing down around him. And I would be there, standing tall in the rubble, ready to build a new life for myself and my daughter. The game was changing, and this time I held all the cards. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the hospital room as I lay there, my body battered and bruised from the car accident. 3 weeks had passed, but the pain still lingered, both physical and emotional. Milo's cruel words from his last visit echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of how far we'd fallen. A soft knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. Come in, I called, expecting another nurse for my routine checkup. Instead, my father's familiar face appeared, his eyes filled with concern. Elara, sweetheart, how are you feeling? Dad. I breathed, relief washing over me. I'm okay, just tired. Cyrus Blackwood approached my bedside, taking my hand in his. His touch was warm, comforting. Everything Milo's hadn't been in years. I've been trying to reach you for days, he said, his brow furrowed. Milo said you weren't up for visitors, but I couldn't stay away any longer. Of course, Milo had been gatekeeping. I shouldn't have been surprised. I'm glad you're here, Dad, I said, squeezing his hand. Cyrus settled into the chair beside my bed, his expression serious. Elara, there's something I need to tell you. Something important. I tensed, bracing myself for bad news. What is it? Do you remember your great-aunt Cordelia? He asked. I nodded, recalling the eccentric old woman who'd always smelled of lavender and peppermints. Of course. She passed away a few years ago, didn't she? Yes, Cyrus confirmed. What you don't know is that she left you something in her will. Something substantial. My heart began to race, setting off the monitor beside me. What do you mean? Cyrus leaned in, lowering his voice. Cordelia left you her entire estate, Elara. The house, her investments, everything. It's all yours. The room seemed to spin around me. But
Why?
why me? She always had a soft spot for you, Cyrus explained. Said you reminded her of herself when she was young. Strong-willed, independent. I almost laughed at that. Independent? I'd been anything but that for years. The thing is, Cyrus continued, there was a stipulation in the will. You weren't to be informed of the inheritance until your 40th birthday. Which was last month, I whispered, the pieces falling into place. Caris nodded. I've been trying to tell you, but with the accident and Milo blocking my calls. A thought struck me, cold and terrifying. Dad, does Milo know about this? No, Cyrus assured me. The lawyers have been very discreet. As far as I know, only you, me, and your mother are aware of the inheritance. Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by a surge of hope. This changed everything. With this inheritance, I had options. I could leave Milo, provide for Juniper, start a new life. How much? I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Cyrus hesitated, then said, "It's in the millions, Alara. You'll never have to worry about money again." Tears welled up in my eyes, a mix of gratitude and overwhelming emotion. "Oh, Dad," I choked out. He squeezed my hand, his eyes searching my face. "Alara, I know things haven't been right between you and Milo for a long time. Your mother and we've been worried sick. This inheritance, it could be your chance, your way out." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. All the fears and doubts that had held me back, how I'd support Juniper, where we'd live, suddenly evaporated. "You don't have to decide anything now," Cyrus said gently. "Take your time, think it through. But know that you have options now. You're not trapped anymore." As the reality of my situation sank in, a plan began to form in my mind. The evidence from the private investigator, the mysterious safe in the attic, and now this unexpected windfall, it was all coming together. "Dad," I said, my voice stronger now, "I need your help with something." Cyrus leaned in, his expression serious. "Anything, sweetheart. What do you need?" "I need you to keep this inheritance a secret for a little while longer," I explained. "And I need you to take care of Juniper for a few days next week. Can you do that?" He nodded, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. "Of course. But, Alara, whatever you're planning, be careful. Milo, he's—" "I know, Dad," I interrupted. "Believe me, I know exactly what Milo is capable of. But it's time I showed him what I'm capable of too." As Cyrus left, promising to return with my mother soon, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The accident that had landed me in this hospital bed wasn't just a setback. It was the catalyst for my liberation. Milo thought he had all the power, that I was helpless without him. But he was wrong. With the truth about his affair, the mystery of the safe, and now this unexpected fortune, I held all the cards. The game was about to change, and Milo had no idea what was coming. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to smile, a real, genuine smile that reached my eyes. Freedom was within my grasp, and I was ready to seize it with both hands. The sterile hospital room felt different today. The air was charged with tension as I sat up in bed, my heart pounding in anticipation. Today was the day I would confront Milo and reclaim my life. I heard his footsteps before I saw him, that familiar confident stride that used to make my heart flutter. Now, it only filled me with determination. Milo entered, his face a mask of concern that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Alara, darling, how are you feeling today?" I met his gaze steadily. "I'm feeling much better, Milo. Please sit down. We need to talk." He hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing his features before he complied. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I know about patience, Milo." The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about?" "Don't insult my intelligence," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I know about your affair. I have proof." Milo's expression hardened. "You're confused, Alara. The accident must have—" "Stop lying," I interrupted, reaching for the folder on my bedside table. "I have photos, credit card statements, hotel receipts. Do you want to see them?" His eyes darted to the folder, then back to my face. "You had me followed," he hissed, anger replacing his feigned concern. "I did what I had to do," I replied. "You left me no choice." Milo stood abruptly, pacing the small room. "This is ridiculous. You've clearly lost your mind. When we get home, we'll find you a good therapist and—" "I'm not going home with you, Milo," I said firmly. "Not now, not ever." He whirled to face me, his eyes blazing. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying it's over. I want a divorce." Milo's laugh was cold, mirthless. "A divorce? And how exactly do you plan to support yourself? You haven't worked in years. You have nothing without me. I allowed myself a small smile. That's where you're wrong. I have more than you could imagine. Confusion flickered across his face, quickly replaced by suspicion. What are you talking about? I've inherited a fortune, Milo.
Milio.
I don't need your money anymore. He stared at me, disbelief etched on his features. You're lying. I'm not, I said calmly. But that's not all. I know about the safe in the attic, Milo. What are you hiding in there? Milo's face went pale, then flushed with rage. In 2 quick strides, he was at my bedside, looming over me. You stay away from that safe. Do you understand me? He snarled, gripping my arm painfully. I refused to flinch. Or what, Milo? You'll hurt me? Like you've been hurting me for years? His grip tightened, and for a moment, I saw the monster beneath the charming facade. You have no idea what I'm capable of, he growled. Neither do you. I shot back, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I'm not the weak, submissive wife you think I am. Not anymore. Milo's eyes narrowed. Is that so? And what about Juniper? Do you really think you can take care of her on your own? Don't you dare bring our daughter into this, I hissed. She deserves better than a father who lies and cheats. His hand raised, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he might strike me. But then, a nurse appeared in the doorway. Is everything all right in here? She asked, her eyes darting between us suspiciously. Milo released my arm, his face instantly transforming into a mask of concern. Everything's fine. My wife is just a bit emotional today. The nurse didn't look convinced. Mr. Henderson, I think it's time for you to leave. Mrs. Henderson needs her rest. Milo's jaw clenched, but he nodded. Of course. I'll be back tomorrow, darling, he said, his tones sickly sweet. As he turned to leave, I called out, Don't bother, Milo. I'll have my lawyer contact you. He froze for a moment, then stormed out without another word. As soon as he was gone, I let out a shaky breath. The nurse rushed to my side. Mrs. Henderson, are you all right? Do you want me to call security? I shook my head. No, thank you. But could you please call my father? Cyrus Blackwood. His number is in my contact list. She nodded, patting my hand gently before leaving the room. Alone again, I closed my eyes, my mind reeling from the confrontation. I had done it. I had stood up to Milo. And I had survived. But I knew this was just the beginning. Milo's reaction to the safe troubled me. What could he be hiding that would make him so angry, so afraid? Whatever it was, I was determined to find out. As I waited for my father to arrive, I began to plan my next moves. I would need to secure a lawyer, find a new place to live, and most importantly, protect Juniper from the fallout. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. I had reclaimed my voice, my power, and my future. Milo thought he had won, that he had broken me down over the years. But he was wrong. This was just the beginning of my comeback, and I was ready for whatever came next. Let him rage. Let him threaten. I was no longer afraid. I was Alara Blackwood, and I was finally free. The warm afternoon sun streamed through the windows of my parents' living room, casting a golden glow on Juniper as she played with her dolls. It had been 2 months since I'd left the hospital and moved in with my parents, 2 months of rebuilding my life piece by piece. Mommy, look, Juniper exclaimed, holding up a doll she'd dressed in a miniature business suit. She's a boss lady, just like you're going to be. I smiled, my heart swelling with love and pride. That's right, sweetheart. We're both going to be strong, independent women. As I watched my daughter play, I marveled at how much had changed in such a short time. The divorce proceedings were underway, and thanks to the inheritance from Aunt Cordelia, I had the resources to fight Milo's attempts to control the narrative. My phone buzzed with a text from Samantha Reed, the private investigator. Big news. Call ASAP. Excusing myself, I stepped into the kitchen to make the call. Alara, Samantha's voice was urgent. We cracked the safe. You're not going to believe what we found. My heart raced as she detailed the contents. Offshore account numbers, incriminating documents. and evidence of large-scale financial fraud at Milo's company. This is huge, I breathed. What do we do now? I've already contacted the authorities, Samantha replied. They're moving to freeze Milo's assets. But Alara, be careful. He's going to be desperate when he finds out. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Milo's car in the driveway. He's here, I whispered. I have to go. Ending the call, I took a deep breath and opened the door. Milo stood there, his once impeccable appearance now disheveled, his eyes wild. Alara, he said, his voice a mixture of anger and desperation. We need to talk. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me to shield Juniper from whatever was about to unfold. There's nothing to talk about, Milo. It's over. He ran a hand through his unkempt hair. You don't understand. I'm in trouble. Big trouble. I need your help. My help, I scoffed. After everything you've done? Please, he begged, his facade crumbling. They're investigating the company. I could go to prison. If you just sign a few documents, testify that you knew nothing about the finances. I cut him off.
No, Milo.
I won't lie for you. His expression darkened.
You owe me, Alara.
After everything I've done for you and Juniper. Everything you've done? I interrupted, my voice rising. You mean controlling every aspect of our lives? Cheating on me? Belittling me at every turn? Milo's eyes narrowed. You ungrateful bitch. You'd be nothing without me. That's where you're wrong, I said, standing tall. I'm everything I am in spite of you, not because of you. He lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You'll regret this, Alara. I'll make sure you never see Juniper again. Before I could react, a strong hand clamped down on Milo's shoulder. I suggest you let go of my daughter, my father's voice boomed. Milo released me, stumbling backward. Cyrus stood protectively in front of me, his eyes blazing with fury. You're finished, Milo, I said, my voice steady. The authorities know everything. It's only a matter of time before they come for you. The color drained from Milo's face. You open the safe. I nodded. It's over. Leave now before I call the police. For a moment, I thought he might lash out again. But then, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Without another word, he turned and stumbled to his car, driving away with a screech of tires. As the adrenaline faded, I sagged against my father. It's really over, I whispered. Cyrus hugged me tightly. You did it, sweetheart. You're free. Over the next few weeks, the full extent of Milo's crimes came to light. He was arrested, his company crumbled, and his reputation was left in tatters. Meanwhile, my life blossomed. With the help of a financial advisor, I invested my inheritance wisely. I enrolled in business courses at the local college, determined to build a career of my own. Most importantly, I focused on healing and creating a stable, loving environment for Juniper. One evening, as I tucked Juniper into bed, she asked, Mommy, are you happy now? I smiled, kissing her forehead. Yes, sweetheart. I'm very happy. Me too, she said, yawning. I like it when you smile. You didn't smile much before. Her innocent observation brought tears to my eyes. Well, we have a lot to smile about now. And I promise you, we always will. As I left her room, I paused in the hallway, overcome with emotion. The road to this point had been long and painful, but we had made it. Milo's shadow no longer loomed over us. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, truly myself. The future stretched out before me, full of possibilities. I was Alara Blackwood, mother, survivor, and now, architect of my own destiny. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew I had the strength to face them. Because now, finally, I was free. The community center bustled with activity as I made my way through the crowded hallway. Colorful posters advertising various classes and support groups lined the walls. I paused in front of one that read, Women's Empowerment Workshop, and smiled to myself. Alara. There you are, called out Sarah, the center's coordinator. We're all set up in room 3 for your session. I nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. It had been 6 months since Milo's arrest, 6 months of rebuilding and rediscovering myself. Today marked a new chapter, my first time leading a support group for women leaving abusive relationships. As I entered the room, I was greeted by a circle of women, their faces a mixture of hope and apprehension. I recognized that look. I'd worn it myself not so long ago. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice steady. "I'm Alara, and I'm here to share my story with you. But more importantly, I'm here to listen to yours." Over the next hour, we talked, cried, and even laughed together. As I shared my journey, the manipulation, the fear, the moment I decided to take back control, I saw recognition in their eyes. When they shared their own stories, I felt a deep connection to each of them. "Remember," I said as our session wound down, "you are stronger than you know. Your worth isn't determined by anyone else. It comes from within." As the women filed out, many stopping to hug me or whisper thanks, I felt a sense of purpose I'd never experienced before. This was why I'd survived, why I'd fought so hard. Not just for myself and Juniper, but for all the women who needed to know they weren't alone. Outside the community center, I found my parents waiting with Juniper. My daughter ran to me, her face beaming. "Mommy, did you save all the ladies today?" she asked, her innocence making me smile. I knelt down to her level.
No, sweetheart.
"They're saving themselves. I'm just helping them remember how strong they are." Juniper nodded solemnly. "Like how you remembered?" "Exactly like that," I said, hugging her tightly. As we walked to the car, my father squeezed my shoulder. "I'm so proud of you, Alara," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We both are," my mother added, her eyes shining. Back at my parents' house, our temporary home until the new apartment was ready, I sat on the porch, watching Juniper play in the yard. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over everything, reminding me of new beginnings. My phone buzzed with a text from Samantha Reed. "Thought you'd want to know. Milo's sentencing is tomorrow. Looks like he'll be away for a long time." I took a deep breath, surprised by the lack of emotion I felt. Milo no longer held power over me, not even enough to evoke anger or satisfaction at his downfall. "Everything okay?" my mother asked, joining me on the porch. I showed her the text. "It's really over," I said softly. She took my hand. "It's been over for a while, sweetheart. This is just the final page of that chapter." I nodded, realizing she was right. I'd moved on long before this moment, had built a new life filled with purpose and joy. "Mom," I said, turning to her, "I've been thinking. I want to start a foundation to help women like me, women who need support to leave abusive situations." Her face lit up. "That's a wonderful idea, Alara. Your father and I will help in any way we can." As the sun began to set, Juniper ran up to us, breathless and grinning. "Mommy, Grandma, look what I found." She held up a small, white feather. "It's beautiful, darling," I said. "Do you know what they say about white feathers?" She shook her head, eyes wide with curiosity. "They say it's a sign of new beginnings and peace," I explained. "A reminder that we're on the right path." Juniper's face grew serious. "Is that our path now, Mommy? Peace and new beginnings?" I pulled her into my lap, holding her close. "Yes, sweetheart. That's exactly our path." As we sat there, the 3 generations of us together, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The road had been long and painful, but it had led me here, to this moment of contentment and possibility. I thought about the women I'd met today, about the foundation I wanted to build, about the bright future ahead for Juniper and me. For the first time in years, I felt truly, completely free. The shadows of the past no longer haunted me. Instead, I looked forward to tomorrow with hope and excitement. I was Alara Blackwood, survivor, mother, advocate. And my story was far from over. As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, I made a silent vow. To always remember my strength, to never lose sight of my worth, and to use my experiences to light the way for others. This wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning of a life reclaimed, of dreams reborn, of a future filled with endless possibilities. And I was ready for every moment of it.